amazima go Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Bobi Wine yafuukira Yoweri Kaguta Museveni ne Muhoozi Kainerugaba ekirooto eky'entiisa. Ne bwe twogerera essaawa zino Bobi Wine nga tali mu ggwanga Uganda, abasajja basula ku tebuuke. Atulaba ku mukutu ogwa Strange, nsanso okulaba era n'enkwebaza okubanga otuwakinga. Gy'osinzira okubanga otuwakinga n'enkusaba nti please kindly share the video, tambuza video buli muntu amanye ki ekigenda mu maaso ku mukutu. Now, njagala olabe ebirooto eby'entiisa Bobi Wine byasindikira Museveni ng'asinzidde mu ggwanga lya America gye yagenda okubaako emirimu emitongole gy'akola. Tukomewo.
The project under General Museveni, the project is not Uganda. The project is Museveni and his family. The agenda is not to lead the country to a better place. The agenda is to keep power within the family at all costs. So, that being the way it is, it ceases to be an issue of the National Unity Platform, the party that I lead. It's an issue of all Ugandans. And like I said, NUP is our electoral platform. This is a party, by the way, that we introduced only 1 month to the 2021 election. Why? Because all other opposition political parties had been paid and ordered by the regime to keep away from us because we were seen as too radical and uncompromising, and our agenda was and still is removing the dictatorship and beginning a new democratic journey for our country, Uganda. That being the way it is, it becomes, as it has always been, a matter of the people of Uganda as a whole. When this silly law was being passed the day before yesterday, the National Unity Platform under the able leadership of Right Honorable Joel Swenyonyi put up a moral case because that's what we could do. But the people of Uganda had to stand firm as they should and as I'm confident will. I'll give you an example of the fight against slavery. While the moral white people were in Congress trying to make a case against slavery and asserting that slavery is immoral, the likes of Harriet Tubman on the plantation had to also put an effort and communicate to all and sundry that slavery is not only immoral, but it is dangerous. Therefore, while the NUP is making a political moral case, the people of Uganda must rise and free their country. They're like two wings of a bird. One cannot flap alone, it has to work in concert. I hope I communicate to you, my brother. And also to my brother, whose accent sounds like he comes from the ghetto. Thank you for that question. I can tell when I hear somebody speak and the 1, 2, 3 slang, they say, oh, he's not only from Uganda, he's from the ghetto. I'm so proud to find you in the University of Michigan and keep representing the brother. How does the Muhoozi project pose a challenge to the transition? Is that what you were asking?
Not necessarily, but the approach to appointing people in most of these offices, but not just people, but people who represent interests and Muhoozi's interests, not basically for Uganda. People.
What is your question? You seem that's a statement.
Yeah. So now, how does that present a challenge to the transition, and how does it inform the approach we take to remove the dictator?
Thank you very much. Now the two transitions. That in itself is actually a transition from Museveni to his son, who is effectively in charge. He recently appointed one of his friends, head of media center and government spokesperson. He had his birthday and he ordered the police, the military, border riders, taxi riders, to show up and run in celebration of his birthday. And indeed, when you go to his tweets, he tweeted and said, "How come I did not see the former military commanders? Are you undermining me? Why didn't you show up to run and celebrate my birthday?" So that is a transition from Museveni to his son. It's a transition from a pseudo-democracy, from a facade of democracy, to a reign of terror. You saw that when he distinguished himself in terror abductions and extrajudicial killings through this election, abducting people, killing people, torturing people, his father, in response, awarded him with a medal. And in his statement, Museveni's statement, he thanked him for dealing with troublemakers during the election period. This is the same person that threatened to raid Kenya, and the following day, he was promoted to 5-star general. This is the same person that after he tweeted the naked pictures of my bodyguard under torture, 2 days later, he was made Chief of Defense Forces. And he was made Chief of Defense Forces. Unlike other Chiefs of Defense Forces in the past, before he was made Chief of Defense Forces, Museveni signed an instrument that was to the effect that the powers of the Commander-in-Chief were transferred to the Chief of Defense Forces. 2 weeks later, he made his own son Chief of Defense Forces. So that is, by and large, a transition in itself. Is it the transition that Ugandans want? No. Is it the transition that we are going to stop? Yes. The transition that we want is a transition from absolute rule to democracy, from family rule to democratic rule. And we are going to achieve that by the grace of God.
Thank you very much. So Ugandans are some of the most prolific in terms of the use of social media. And I guess that is why the president's son tweets a lot. And if you go on social media, you see a lot of Ugandans using TikTok, Instagram, as well as Twitter or X to communicate ideas. So I want to know, to what extent have you and your group also been using these platforms to communicate with or to mobilize at the grassroots level?
Thank you very much. Yeah, Ugandans are using social media, and largely because it is the remaining medium of communication for Ugandans. Like all dictatorships, the media is completely usurped. Most, if not all, radio stations are controlled by the regime. Those that dared to challenge the regime have been either closed or completely incapacitated. Majority of the radio presenters are owned by military chiefs, regime operatives, ministers, name it. And others that used to speak out don't. For example, I am not hosted on any radio or TV station in Uganda. Never mind that my voice is the most heard and my cute face is the most seen. Why? Thanks to social media. Social media has always been our way out. And the regime has not taken this lightly. This started when I rose to the occasion and became member of parliament. The regime could not stop this message from going out. So what the regime did is that they introduced a tax on social media. Yes, the first in the world, social media tax. I and many of my friends went to prison for protesting against the social media tax. No tax on the internet. You could buy your MBs, but you had to pay a tax to use Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp or that. That did not work because the people of Uganda said, okay, we shall pay that tax, but we shall communicate. They started finding ways of going around it. The next step, and that was during the 2021 election, Facebook was the only way we were communicating. That was before the introduction of TikTok and others. Facebook was the most popular social media in Uganda. It was banned. So 6 years ago, Facebook is banned in Uganda. Why? Because it annoys General Museveni. That did not work either. Because, like I told you, Ugandans are largely young people, and with age comes with creativity. So Ugandans went around that ban, and we use VPN, and it works. So if you ever get your Facebook banned here, because it can, VPN did a good job for us. So when that, happened, General Museveni, using another member of parliament that poses to be an opposition member of parliament, introduced a law called the Computer Misuse Act. And under this law, many TikTokers, many Twips, and many bloggers are rotting in jail for communicating what the regime does not like. Never mind the fact that Museveni's son himself, who is the chief of defense forces, pictures people's wives and posts them naked. Pictures citizens and posts them naked. On a daily, he's posting unhinged stuff. But as you know, the law in Uganda is nothing more than the paper on which it's written. So yeah, while there are those challenges, one thing that I'm proud to say is that Ugandans are unrelenting. We are always creating. We are always dynamic. And we always go around these blockages like we have done to date. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a couple hands. Oh yeah, somebody already has a microphone. Please go on.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And then,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, thank you. My name is Eloise Salif. As an African, a Liberian, I'm from Liberia, West Africa. So when you talk about political violence, electoral violence, dictatorship, it's something I've experienced. When you talk about passion of the young people getting involved to seize the opportunity and get the movement for themselves to play a role in growing the state, I played that role in my younger years, growing up in Liberia. My parents didn't even know I was active in my country, advocating for change. One of my first protests was the last big protest that was heard in Liberia. Innocent, enthusiastic, energetic. I knew I wanted something different. But that difference didn't end well. Why it's true we protest for change, the same things we talk about, like you stated, when Museveni came into power, he advocated for change. So, there's protests in Liberia. Then the Civil War, came the Civil War. I think you heard of Liberia Civil War.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't change anything in our country. Many of us lost loved ones. But I was fortunate to leave Liberia and come to the United States. Stay looking for that energy to fight for democracy. And living in the United States, my big brother here, Muhoozi, can attest to that. I get in contact with my immigrants community, telling them to be active while you are away from home. Know your rights as an immigrant. know who's representing you, vote, but still be connected to your country and people back home. And for that reason, I go back to Liberia every other year, join political party, advocate, and participate in the election. But advocating now and leaning towards democracy is becoming so fearful. Very fearful. And having worked and still working in one of the countries in the world that I have looked up to as the greatest democracy, and seeing that there's other things happening, my fear increases for people like you, activists in Africa, activists of political leaders in developing countries. So I have a question, and I try to write this question down because I want to be politically correct. A question for you, it says that when you look at the present trend on the global scene with democracy, you see how it's being attacked and it's eroding. And the key actor that's carrying on this attack comes from a nation that we look up to for democracy on our continent. Uganda being no exception. So I want to ask you, are you still of the notion that democracy is universal? 1, 2, and are you willing to continue to put your life on the line for democracy in Uganda? That's my question. When you look at the global picture of how democracy is eroding now, that's a question I have for you.
Thank you. If you permit me immediately respond to my sister here. Yeah, what's my view on the global trend of democracy universal, and how do I look at it? Man, oh man. I'm glad you said you want to be politically correct. I don't want to be I hate being politically correct, but I'll be cautious because I'm a refugee here now. I'd rather not mess with you guys. But a while ago I told you Americans that democracy, however old it is always one step away from extinction. So guard it with your life. Yeah, I mean, Liberia, at least you've been there. You've had people like Charles Taylor, and at least you are an example. You had Africa's first female president, and you have had the opportunity of voting in and out presidents, including the famous George Weah and all that. We envy you, man. You're not where you're supposed to be, but you're certainly where we would love to at least reach in our lifetimes, to be able to choose our own leaders, to see our vote counting. We don't have a vote in Uganda. We want to have a vote. We have been independent for 63 years, since 1962. But not one president has been elected to power. They shoot their way in and they're shot out of power. We want to see an elected president by the people of Uganda in our lifetime. You mentioned it that many times it gets dangerous. Yes, it gets dangerous. Many people, many of our brothers and sisters, we don't know where they are. They don't even have homes. But they were picked from home on camera. Many of my friends are in prison. Eddie Mutwe, Machete Yasin, young ladies like Olivia Lutaya, Doreen Kaija, Sauda Madada, name them. As we speak right now, there are young women that were picked, about 2 or so weeks ago. A young lady, a TikToker called Beauty, was picked from a funeral of the wife of our spokesperson who passed away when he was in prison on a trumped-up case. She was picked by the military. Up to now, we don't know where she is. So it gets tough. I'm not home. You know, we are scattered. My young family is elsewhere. I am here trying to advance the cause. It comes with a cost. But I can tell you, my sister, at the end of the day, that cost is worth it. Why? Because we know that freedom comes to those who fight, not to those who cry. Because the more we cry, the more our people continue to die. So we choose to fight because ain't no other way, you know. At least we know that when we don't give up, victory is imminent. More fierce evils have been overcome. Slavery was overcome. Colonialism was overcome. Apartheid was overcome. These were evils with more grounded forces and resources. Then what about dictatorships? Which dictatorships are actually empowered by democracies like America? So if we don't stop fighting, we will get there. I can only say, let's keep the hope alive. Let us not stop. Let us use every opportunity. Let us keep putting one foot in front of the other. The little things that we do add up to much more. Maybe in just this little conversation that we're going, maybe we'll spark minds that will also spark others. I used to love Tupac. Tupac said, I'm not sure that I'll change the world, but I'm sure that I'll spark the brain that will change the world. Now, you guys are already burning brains. It's just to remind you of how important you are, of how effective that you are, of how much you can do more, you know, and maybe that will create a ripple effect. And before you know, we achieve what we must achieve. For as long as we don't stop, let us not look at the threat, let us look at the prize. Thank you.
Yeah, so we are happy to have two more questions.
All right.
I have actually my first PhD advisee here at the University of Michigan is also here. I would love to give the third opportunity to him. You have to, because his research is on music and politics in Nigeria. And so I'll give the third. So two plus his three.
Okay.
Yeah, but briefly, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, His Excellence, and yeah, for all the insightful aspects that you have shared. I'm glad that you touched on the dictators of Africa, Mugabe's, obviously Museveni's, and many others established the frontline states. And of course, some well-respected statesmen like Kenneth Kaunda's, Julius Nyerere's, and many, Samora Machel's, and many others were quite progressive. So my question is, what's the game plan? Because definitely you do have your own youngsters of your own generation, the likes of Chamisa. I know you're quite close to Chamisa in Zimbabwe. And the same modus operandi, I think Uganda and Zimbabwe are quite twins in a way when you talk about this politics of dictatorship, because whatever is happening in Uganda is what is happening in Zimbabwe right now, and constitutional changes, if I might be allowed to say, and many other atrocities, especially when it comes to human rights violation. So I understand that dismantling of colonialism came about due to international solidarity, regional solidarity, national solidarity, and of course the diaspora plays a very important role. So what's the game plan for you? Thank you.
Thank you. What's the game plan? Oh, man.
The other question. The next question.
I forgot to say I'm Janet Munakamwe, UMED scholar, African Studies Center, based in South Africa. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shakira. I'm from Uganda. My question is going to be brief. So, as we all know, not all of us, but Ugandans that are here and back home, we know healthcare system is sucks. Last summer I got a chance to go back home and I was shadowing at Barat Referral Hospital where people die left and right. It was horrible. Yes, death is inevitable, but sometimes it can be avoided. But people couldn't afford 2,000 shillings, which is less than $1, to buy medical supplies. And this is supposed to be a government hospital. So my question to you, Mr. President, is, so I'm going to manifest. When you become the president or your party, which measures or policies or plans do you have for affordable and accessible healthcare for the people that can't afford it? Thank you.
And let's get Joshua's also at once, and then we.
Okay, thank you so much for coming to speak with us. As you know, Charles said, I'm his PhD student, so Joshua Kurobo in the School of Music, Theater, and Dance as an ethnomusicologist. But yeah, I have so many questions I'd love to ask you, but I will just ask one that's very simple. I know that you brought up this love of Bob Marley. Been reading the works, that Charles has written on you and your kind of early political activism, even when it was over this, One Love Beach that became a very contested place. But I'm just wondering about, when thinking about popular music and reggae, for example, like where did that love of Bob Marley come from? Are there other reggae artists that you're inspired by? And how does, the work that they put in with their music, and of course their own sort of political trials and tribulations, how do those sorts of things inspire your own? Because of course Bob Marley was fighting this larger gang war in Jamaica, but I mean that was kind of that was overshadowed by what was this larger battle between communism and capitalism. And so I'm just wondering how some of these elements might come out in your musical work. And then if I could just add a quick one, I'm thinking about Fela Kuti, and something similar happened between him and the military, right? Even I don't think he wasn't even really that politically inclined at the time, but he was saying things that the military didn't like. And so of course they came to his home, they beat so many people, they threw his mother out the window, which she eventually succumbed to her injuries. But I'm wondering about, because he created Zombie after that one, and it became very kind of insulting to the military. I'm wondering if you have something like that, at least musically, that's cooking, to critique those that are in the military, and in what sort of way? Because when we think about these dictatorships or these military regimes, right, it's the military, right? It really, not to say that, of course, there's not one big man behind it, but it's the military, and there are individuals in that military that can hopefully have their heads turned. Not to say that we should be hoping for a coup over the return of democracy, but is there a way to inspire people that also are seeing this guy, this son of again a rich dictator, and saying like this guy is not the one to lead us? What does he even know about military conduct and whatnot? And if you have any sort of opinions about that.
Thank you. Interesting questions, and sadly it's the last batch of questions, but I hope my humble answers will communicate to you effectively. Now, the first sister asked, what is our game plan? Maybe I should attempt your question last. Let me go from down. Let me start with the brother who asked me about the music, where I got the love of the music, of such, protest music, activist music, revolutionary music, and whether I am doing anything more of the same. Yes, I got inspired not only by Bob Marley. I mean, here I speak of Bob Marley because Bob Marley was more international. I wasn't sure people knew of people like Fela until you mentioned, glad you come from Nigeria. But people like Peter Tosh spoke truth to power. I mean, people like, without a doubt, Fela Anikulapo Kuti, amazing guy. He took so many beatings from the Nigerian